Not present.
Mr. Kasimis? You have 5 present.
We have a quorum.
You have a
Okay.
quorum.
All right, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 regular meeting. Would someone move the item?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Frere.
No, I think it was
has
by
everyone-
Mr. Abrams.
Oh, Mr. Abrams, I'm sorry. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the May 3rd meeting?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Are there any changes, additions, or deletions? Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes as they are, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the minutes are approved, the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 meeting. The next item on the agenda, there is no special appropriations agenda to deal with, so we'll go right to the transfer agenda, section B on page 11. And the first transfer matter is the fire department.
Do we have to move it, Ed, or still?
Yeah.
move it?
Well, yeah, shall we just move the whole transfer agenda rather than do it one at a time, if that's okay?
Okay.
All
So
right,
moved, Troy.
all right, so the whole thing has been moved. We'll begin with the fire department. It's transfer totaling $321,278. Anyone like to speak on that? Is there someone from the fire department here?
Yes, good evening,
Okay.
good evening. I don't know you were talking about me. Okay, so the first item, the water account, 2 letters were submitted by both water companies explaining why they have their yearly increases. I know you were looking for some type of contract, but according to the Corporation Council, they feel that they're going to give the chief financial officer 6 months notice of any price increase. So those are included in your packet. And that was for $71,278.
So what happens if, I'm sorry, Chief, what happens if they ask for an increase and we don't agree with it?
Or more to the point though, what happens if they don't give us 6 months lead notice?
I don't know. I guess it goes back to the Corporation Council and the lawyers will have to get involved. You know,
Okay.
I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately.
May I ask you another question? And this may be something for Ms. Fogel or Mr. Dakowitz if he's on the conference. There appears to be $2,088,301 in wages and salaries, of which only $250,000 are being used for overtime. But of the $71,278 for the water usage for the increased fees, that actually is coming out of our contingency rather than out of the wages and salary. I think I know why, because effectively it's an increase in your budget over what was anticipated. But is that the reason, or is there some other budgetary reason why it's coming out of contingency rather than the available $2,088,301, which eventually, if unused, will fall back into our fund balance? But
Angela has taught me that we are not allowed to spend any monies that have not been authorized by the council and the BET in the budget process. So therefore, this money comes out of contingency and then we replenish it.
I got you. Okay. So that wasn't in the original budget, and so that's why it's got to come out of contingency.
If not, we'd have to come with a separate resolution to say,
Yeah.
may we spend this money in excess of the approved budget. That's what contingency is for, and that's why we draw it down from there.
I understand. Okay. Are there any other questions? All right. All in favor of approving the transfer of $321,278, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, one opposition?
Yes, I oppose that.
Okay, James Freer opposes it. Any abstentions? Okay. So the item passes with one vote in opposition. Next item on the agenda is the Information Technology Department transfer of $120,000 of the available $355,000 in wages and salaries. And this is to pay for.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
We forgot the wages and salary.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, that item was considered all as one, and so I made reference to the $321,278.
Okay,
So there were no questions about that item, I assume, and so that's why we just went right to a vote.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so information technologies, 120. Is there someone here who can speak on that?
Oh, hi, this is Joyce, IT director. So we are transferring from the regular salary wage into this part-time to support two retirees that are leaving us since last October. So they've been working part-time for us. Karen Del Vecchio is a former IT director. David Ross is a senior system administrator. They've been helping us throughout this difficult time. Karen being leaving us, and David Ross still try to finish the project he started with, and probably until the end of this fiscal year. So this money is transferring from their regular salary range into this part-time account.
I see. Okay. Are there any questions?
Is that at the same rate that he was getting when he was a full-time employee?
Yes, but they've been only working for 20 hours per week.
So is he a contract employee then?
It is working as a part-time person. So they instead their regular. So we create another account in the Munis for them. So they come back as a part-time person.
James, they officially retired.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped getting paid as an employee. And yes,
Okay.
we brought them back as a part-time consultant, contract employee, whatever you want to call it.
So there's no benefits or anything?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. All in favor of approving the $120,000 transfer from wages and salaries to part-time wages and salaries, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries, and that transfer is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Police department, $60,000 from an available budget of 1.4 million for 25 protective vests. Is there someone from the police department?
Yeah, this is Mickey Dosman, the administrative manager. I'd be happy to field any questions or explain anything you need about this transfer. In general, I can just be really quick. Surplus money in the wage account due to vacancies, some COVID things that went on. Just in administration, we've had two people who took the early retirement package. So there's ample salary money around. The vests, standard 5-year replacement. We bought them in 2015. Originally, they were in the capital budget, but OPM pointed out that they're not a 10-year item; they're a 5-year item. So that's how they sort of went into the operating. They were part of a general cut, and here we are. We'll still have plenty of money left in the salary account to cover any other deficits that may occur. So that's kind of the basic thing of the transfer.
So maybe I've got this, a question about that in light of Mr. Dekowitz's explanation for item number 1. The water was not, that increase was not in the budget originally, so that it's got to come out of contingency because otherwise you would need a special resolution. But am I correct that these vests were not in the budget originally, yet they're coming out of an existing wage and salary account?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, this is Angela Fogel.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, we match up all surpluses and deficits to balance everything out, and what is left goes to the fund balance. So
Yes, I understand.
this is a better use of the surplus, not only because it falls under that $5,000 threshold per unit, which is within the policy for our capital budget. But also, I talked with Chitsame, our comptroller, and I put in the explanation that she felt it's probably best not to pay interest expense if we have this surplus in other areas, and if there are any deficits, it's all fungible with all the surpluses.
Yes, I agree. It all falls into fund balance anyway, but I'm just wondering what the distinction is between the two items. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it all falls into the funds, into the fund balance. But it doesn't. It seems to me that that the two things are not being treated the same way. But I have no issue with it.
Right. Ideally, like the second transfer for the fire department, ideally the two items would be related. Like the second item, they need overtime because they have surplus in full-time staff. But I mean, this is a special case that I talked through with the comptroller. Normally, you wouldn't want all the departments to feel that they can use up all that surplus from wages unless there's a good reason, like they needed more overtime. But this was a special case.
Yeah. Okay. And just for my edification, the $5,000 threshold for capital expenditures, I realize that each vest is $2,335, but isn't this capital expenditure a lump, a 25, meaning it's one unit of 25? It's not like each individual vest, because then it gets pretty.
The policy is each individual item. So the decision would be made on each individual item.
So on each vest?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Troy. Just one quick question to Angela. I'm looking on page 29, and in that last paragraph, I was a little concerned when I saw the aforementioned vests reach their end of life in December of 2020 and need to be replaced. I just feel that something this important, maybe we shouldn't just end up. I mean, that comment means, I guess they're obsolete at that point. I mean, I prefer not to go past an end of life date like that for something so important in the future.
Hi, Mickey. Can you field the question on the useful life?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we'll definitely keep an eye on it. This won't happen again. I think part of the thing is, we budget a year and a half in advance. So, the budget we prepare in October is all the way up to, say, for this October, and as you all know, October of 2021, going to go out to May of 2023. And I think we kind of thought in that period of time somewhere we'd be able to acquire them. We never had the funds. There was some confusion about capital operating. So we kind of ran a couple months over, but your point is well taken, and if this transfer is approved, we'll have them in a month, and I think everybody will be good. I think also the end of life date is an approximation. I don't think actually in December they become, not useful, but it's sort of a recommended thing when you should start to replace them. And that's kind of what we're doing.
I get that, but I think for something like this, that is literally a life and death issue, I would say I'd rather err getting replacements earlier than later in the future. That's all.
Absolutely. Your point's well taken, and we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is Jim Frayer. Mickey, do you have a process that these have serial numbers on them and they're assigned to different officers? Or is this just they're laying there and officers help themselves do it? And then do you have a system where you monitor that the use of them and you can tell that this officer and this officer and that officer, it's time to have their vests renewed?
Absolutely. All the equipment is logged in by training per officer on not just this, but anything that they have. Like, for example, like their mace or their tasers, all that stuff has a lifespan, and it is all very well documented, like I said, by training. And, we did run over on these a couple months, but we won't let that happen again.
Okay. So the officers didn't say anything that the fact that their vests are past due?
I think what also happens is, don't forget when an officer retires or leaves or could possibly move inside, the vest sometime get moved around. So yes, sometime a vest is with the same officer for an indefinite period of time, but they could also be moved around. So I'm sure some people did come forward to training, but then on the other hand, guys got them and they sort of depend on their division commanders and kind of the powers to be to make these replacements happen at the right time. And that's kind of where we are.
I don't mean to be nitpicky here, but
No, it's okay.
the system that you're just describing now is different from the system that you said was in place and you were able to monitor exactly where all these things were.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you just say that one more time? I got kind of a connection that's coming in and out. I apologize.
So what you said originally was that you do have a system where these are assigned to officers and you're able to track the serial numbers of them. And then you went on to say just now that, well, maybe because of the commanding officer moves things around, or somebody retires and somebody picks up another vest, and it sounds like that system doesn't work.
I would say in this case, like I said, we were late, and I think it was more of an administrative matter of we were originally going to put them in the capital budget, and then we neglected to get them in at the right time in the operating, and that's why we ran over. But they are all tracked, and like I said, our training commander is the person who keeps that, and I'm sure he could provide any of those records for anybody who wanted to see them at any time. I'm more of the financial guy, but the people who are actually handing out the equipment have meticulous records on all of our
I think to Mr. Gelleret's point is that these are, very important pieces of equipment that our police officers have. And I would think that we would really go out of our way to make sure that, they've got the most up to date within the expiration date equipment, and that every officer would know about that. And I would think that if I was an officer, I'd sure damn well know that whether my vest was beyond its expiration date.
Can I just jump in? I'm assuming by what's been said is that these vests don't just disintegrate or degrade immediately upon reaching the expiration date, that it's more of a guide, and that you can probably use these things for another year probably, and it's going to be fine, but it's better just to be proactive and just swap them out as the manufacturer recommends. Is that right? Is that why there was a certain
I don't want to say anything that would disrespect the expiration date, because it should and will be honored, but I think that's sort of the long and short of it. The manufacturer is usually kind of aggressive on replacement for a number of reasons, but 2 months after or 3 months after that, their recommended replacement, I'm sure they're still viable and if we can get these replaced within a month or two, I think everybody could proceed safely. And like I said, going forward, we probably would try to replace them a year ahead of time, or so on and so forth. And that's kind of where I think it stands.
Well, I'm sorry, but the explanation you're giving me over control over these vests and when we have to replace them does not sound like it's very effective at all. And I think that it now begs the question as to what other control mechanisms do you have where we're providing our officers with equipment that they need, that those systems are not in working order.
I think for our purposes though, James, I think that is sort of more of a management, thing.
Exactly.
For our purposes, we either approve it or we don't approve it. And obviously, I don't see, given how important this item is, how we can not approve the item. But I think that sort of, micromanaging how and when their quality, how their quality control is, I think is something that's probably outside of our purview, I think.
I think that we're talking about controls that are financial controls that we want to see in place. And this, to me, is a control that should be in place. Clearly, we're not going to not vote for this transfer, but I think that I don't know whether there are other ones out there that we're missing, that we should have built into our budget, perhaps.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, can I suggest that perhaps, given Mr. Frere's concerns, what we do is put on a future agenda, a discussion about controls in place to look at expiration dates of equipment and when it needs to be approved, so that we can move on from this particular item?
My only hesitancy with that is that I don't know that that is
not our purview.
within our purview as a Board of Estimate and Taxation. I think
I'm just trying to suggest a way to move forward and acknowledge the fact that Mr. Frere is concerned with financial use on expiring or other technologies. We find a different time to discuss it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ed again. Just to follow up on what Jim was saying. By the way, just for the record, it's not 1 month or 2 months. They expired on 12/20, and if you buy them in the next 2 months, we're talking 7 or 8 months. So just want to get that on the record because someone said 1 month, and it's past that, well past 1 month.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. Let's I'm sure that the police department will be happy to do what we ask. But let's just sort of circle back on this to see what it is the BET has authority to look into. I'm not sure that this is something that we do. I think, I think our concern would be, that this is sort of the last minute addition to the budget or a transfer item or something that was not anticipated in the original budget. And so therefore that might have some budgeting impact or some impact that the BET would have some interest in. But I don't know that quality control is one of those things. So maybe we can circle back and think about and decide what it is we do have authority. Yeah, what
Clarification of our role.
Yeah, I think so. I think because otherwise we could get really off topic, and I think probably act outside of our authority, or at least attempt or seek to act outside of our authority. It seems to me that's something I want to do.
Would Donna know? She's on the call, right? Would she know? Maybe she can tell us right now.
Would Donna know what?
Would she know whether this is on our purview? I would
No,
think
I
that
think
it's not.
I think it's more of a legal question,
Okay.
probably.
Mhm.
But we can ask department head for almost anything, but I'm not sure that it's necessarily something we ought to do or be in the business of doing. That's all I'm saying.
Makes sense.
I agree, Ed. I think that we should put this on the agenda at some point and discuss it. The fact of the matter is that we're being asked to approve expenditures for these things, and we should know that what's behind them and what are the controls that you have. Are we getting the right number? Should we be getting more of these things? If we don't have a system that tells us how many of these things are out of expiration, past their expiration date, maybe we should be making twice as much.
Well, I mean,
Okay, so that's my point. I think that
Yeah.
it very much is within our purview, but in the, for the sake of time now, let's put this on the agenda for some future meeting.
I mean, I'm satisfied, just for the record, with the explanation that this was supposed to be a capital item. It was not addressed in time, and now it's an operating budget item. So I don't think this is representative of what of the budgeting that the police department engages in typically. So I don't really have much of an issue with the item coming up as it is now in this context as a transfer item. But yeah, but let's have these discussions. I think perhaps we could set aside the end of our next meeting to have these discussions about what it is we can or should get involved with as a BET.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. All right. So are there any other questions?
One quick one, Mr. Chairman, for Angela. Actually, Angela, you stated that you and Chitsume and others agreed that this is a good exception to the rule. What process and policy are you going to put in place to ensure that others who seek exceptions, that there are clear guidelines of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to move from capital to operating, et cetera? I know, is it simply going to be case by case where you evaluate it?
In the charter, the BET has authority to move any capital item to the operating budget. So yeah, even though we were within the guidelines of the $5,000 mark and other guidance, if the BET wanted to move the Common Council, I have that backwards. The BET has authority to move items in the operating budget. The Common Council could move any item from the capital budget to the operating budget.
But Angela, as I understand it, this item never made it to the capital budget.
Correct. I'm just saying that the charter does give the authority to move any item to operating from capital. So it's not outside of any.
Oh, I see. So that's sort of
authority.
Okay.
So that's at least the rationale. And certainly here, there's one overarching consideration, and that's the matter of a safety of police officers. That could be an exception that you can carve out, I suppose.
Right. So I think this meets a lot of different criteria, that there is charter authority to move anything from capital to operating. And we used to have police vehicles that were hundreds of thousands in operating versus capital, because the decision was made historically to move that item. And also you have the other criteria of it's a small dollar amount. So I think this meets a lot of different criteria to use this surplus to buy these vests.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. All in favor of approving the $60,000 transfer from wage and salary to other operating, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries and the police department transfer is approved. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Your points
Yeah.
are well taken. I'll convey them back to the chief.
Thank you. Okay, so on to other business. Section C. We have some resolutions with respect to capital projects. Now, Council, it seems to me that this resolution, the first, on page 32, basically, there's section 1 and section 2 of a resolution that appears on page 40 that has 13 sections, and section 1 and 2 is on page 32 are meant to replace sections 1 and 2 on page 40. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct, Mr. Chairman. It also revises the detailed listing of the appropriations on Exhibit A and the bond authorizations on Exhibit B to put in the $550,000 for the 6th taxing district request for capital projects. That will
Okay.
be funded through.
All
this.
right. Fair enough. So that in terms of reading these resolutions into the record to start the conversation, just wondering what's your suggestion as how best to approach this?
I think the one resolution to be read is just the title of the resolution to increase the appropriation bond authorizations.
Yeah.
And the rest of it can be just part of the minutes, and then that will be fine. This will, as you know, sync it up with what the Common Council has already approved. The
Right.
council has already approved both the original capital improvement budget and the amendment. So this will put you both on the same footing, and we can proceed with the bond authorization and bond issuance.
Okay, so let's do them one at a time then. The first resolution and then the second resolution that appears on that follows that. Resolution to approve a special capital appropriation in the amount not to exceed $180,000. That's a second separate resolution that is not part of the first of the one that contains 11 sections, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. So, Madam Clerk, would you read the first resolution appearing on page 32, the paragraph in bold?
Resolution to increase the appropriations and bond authorizations for various public improvements by $550,000 for capital projects for the 6th taxing district.
Okay, who would like to move that item?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Who would like to speak on that, council?
Again, just by the way, the history of the way that this played out is that your last regular meeting on May 3rd, you approved the original CIP that Henry and his team had put together. A request came in from the 6th taxing district treasurer on May 11th to add these projects to the CIP. So it was after your last regular meeting. It was right before the Finance and Claims Committee Council meeting. So we didn't have time to get it ready for the Finance and Claims Committee meeting. So they approved the CIP resolution without the amendment. But then when we went to the council at the end of May, we asked the council to approve both the original CIP and the amendment so that they could be all put together, and we would have to come back to you as the BET because as you know, the BET and the Common Council have to approve bond authorization. So this is the last step to put both the resolutions for the BET and the Common Council in the same spot, and to add the $550,000 for the 6th taxing district, so we can move forward. And I'm sure Henry can speak to our plans for doing a bond issue very soon, and that's coming up very soon.
Just for the context, historically, we have borrowed on behalf of the 6th taxing district at their request. We enter into a loan agreement where they get the money and they repay us. We treat them as if they're a division or a department of the city and we're borrowing on their behalf. Chitsime, our controller, has informed me that there's a debt service schedule for the bonds that have been issued on behalf of the 6th taxing district, and they pay the amounts that we expect them to pay for a year in the first month of the year. So there's never been a credit problem. They've always paid promptly, if not early. And this is just an accommodation for them to piggyback. We're going to be borrowing between $40 and $45 million. By adding on $500,000, they will get the benefit of the excellent interest rates we anticipate getting from the market.
Understood. Any questions concerning that? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the resolution as read by Madam Clerk, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the resolution is adopted.
Thank you.
And the resolution is adopted as basically appears on in the agenda as an exhibit pages 32 through I'm sorry. The resolution is pages 40 through I believe 49, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? No, sorry, 40 through 42 with exhibits attached, Exhibit A and Exhibit B ending on page 49, I think. So that's what has been adopted. The next item is resolution number 2. Madam Clerk, that appears on page 40. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, let me go back. So what we adopted was actually on page, appears on page 32 through 39, and on page 40 is the next resolution. So Madam Clerk, if you can read that one on the top of page 40.
Resolution making appropriations for various public improvements aggregating $31,416,972 for the 2021-2022 capital budget and authorizing the issuance of $31,416,972 general obligation bonds of the city to meet certain appropriations in the 2021-2022 capital budget.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that is actually the resolution that you approved on May 3rd.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that one, exactly. And that's
Okay.
Henry's
Oh,
cover memo from
Yeah.
May of 2020. He added that in the package, so you had the context of what.
I see. So
What you actually approved was on pages 32 through 38.
right.
Okay.
So
We don't have to do the other one.
I'm sorry.
You
there's
don't have to
some-
do the other one. You already did that in May. Correct.
Yeah, because
Correct.
that's a lower
Okay.
amount.
There is,
Oh.
however, a second resolution that we do need to review regarding the.
it's the 180,000, right?
Correct.
So that's the one that we need to do, the 180,000 one. So that appears on the agenda as the second paragraph under section 4, resolution to approve, and then it refers to the $180,000. So my apologies, Madam Clerk. Would you mind reading that? It's on the agenda. It's the second full
Right.
the second paragraph.
Got it. Resolution to approve a special capital appropriation in an amount not to exceed $180,000 for capital project account number 0920-6030-5777-C0658 for the West Rock Soccer Complex to be used for additional drainage improvements and tree planting.
That's the resolution. Who would like to move that item?
So moved.
Moved by Ed. Okay. Discussion on that item.
And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. Myself, Anthony Carr, Chief of Operations, Public Works, and Vanessa Valadares, the city engineer, here tonight to speak on behalf of this item. So to give you just a little bit of background and context, the special capital appropriation request and is supported by a memorandum that I included as part of the backup in the package. But just to give you the broad overview, the reason for the request is for several reasons. During the course of the project, which is almost complete, we encountered several unforeseen circumstances, and also we're working to accommodate requests from the adjacent property owner, also known as Sunrise Hill Condominium. So I'll break that out into a few bullet points. The first is that the Sunrise Hill condominiums have requested from the Department of Public Works that additional landscaping, i.e. tree plantings, be included along the western property line, which is basically the side that separates the athletic field and the downhill embankment or slope that leads to the Sunrise Hill condominiums. That's the first request. The second point is the Sunrise Hill condominiums also had requested that Public Works reroute a drainage pipe that was collecting stormwater runoff from our site, i.e. the parking lots and the fields, instead of having a daylight down the same slope that we were looking to screen. When I say daylight, basically means poke out of the slope, rather than have the stormwater runoff drain from the site and poke out through the pipe. which was facing their property, which would travel downhill. They requested that the Department of Public Works evaluate and analyze if that very pipe can be rerouted, redesigned, and reconstructed to connect into an existing catch basin on Aiken Street that was subsequently replaced as part of the project. And the reason for that is Sunrise Hill was just very concerned that they don't want any extra or excess runoff. Now, our stormwater management system was designed in accordance with state and city codes. So there would be less stormwater runoff reaching their property, but out of good faith and to collaborate with our next door neighbor, we did have that pipe that originally designed to poke out of the slope and drain stormwater down the embankment to their property, which is where it was going before the project started. We did evaluate and analyze and determine that there would be no adverse impact if we had connected that same very pipe and ran it into the back of the catch basin. So what that does is that eliminates the surface runoff, keeps the water underground, lets it flow through a pipe from point A to point B, and then we don't see it. So that was okay. We had no issue with that. The third and fourth bullet points, Mr. Chairman, is we also subsequently encountered additional rock during construction. And the fourth bullet point, before I turn it over to Vanessa to add as she feels necessary, the fourth bullet point was that we also encountered city storm sewer, unanticipated city storm sewer that was not included in the reckoning or surveyed within the footprint of the new field. So we wanted to maintain the existing infrastructure, which basically led us to have to redesign a portion of the storm sewer system currently being installed at West Rocks, meaning that we had to add a few extra manholes, a few extra segments of pipe, because we needed to keep the water flowing from the uphill building and the uphill parking lot. That's not part of the project. We needed to divert that water around our field and down I'll call it the slope that leads to Sunrise Hill, because that's where it was going before. So you don't want to bring water after construction where it wasn't going before construction. So you want to maintain existing drainage patterns, both pre and post construction. So that's exactly what we were doing. But again, we didn't know that the pipe was there because it wasn't mapped, and the water went away however it went within the footprint of the field. So that, in a nutshell, is what the memo is saying. So there was 2 requests from Sunrise Hill, condominiums, the tree plantings, and the drainage. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry, no, I was just saying.
Okay.
I wasn't pausing you. Sorry.
All right, no, I didn't want to be rude and interrupt. So the 2 requests were from Sunrise Hill. The third was unforeseen additional rock excavation, and then the fourth was additional unforeseen storm sewer modifications of our city system that ran, we thought, around the field, but actually runs through the field. Vanessa, please feel free to add as you feel necessary in case I missed or didn't include anything.
I think you cover everything. I'm open to answer any further questions if you guys have any.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, can I draw your attention to a related resolution on page 50?
Sure. Page 50. Okay. Yes.
So there is also a request to authorize the issuance of the bonds to pay for this request.
And those are those items 1 and 2 on page 50?
Yes, correct. The first resolution was read into the record, but the second was not. I'm not sure if you want to
I see.
that one at the same time or
Yeah, let's
separately.
do them both. Let's do them both at the same time. I was just reading what was appeared in the agenda, but if that's part of the same discussion, then let's read that. Then let's approve. Then let's consider that resolution at the same time. So, Madam Clerk, would you read resolution number 2 on page 50 of the agenda?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before we do that, and I don't know if it makes any bit of difference whatsoever, the first resolution that we read in on this particular topic has a different account number on the agenda that the clerk read in than the resolution account number on page 50. So I don't know whether we need to read both resolution 1 and 2 into the record from page 50 to make sure the account numbers are correct.
Good point. CO 6 CO31 versus CO658.
Correct, that's what I noticed.
Yeah. Is that an error, or is that, or these two different, I mean, that appears to be an error, correct?
Correct. I think if we look at page 52, and Anthony can confirm this, the account number.
631.
Correct.
631, yeah. Okay, so let's read this. Let's read the two resolutions again. Resolution 1 and Resolution 2 appearing on page 50. And then let's go back to our discussion. But then just to be clear that those are the resolutions that we're referring to as part of this discussion.
You ready?
Yes.
Resolution, approve a special capital appropriation in an amount not to exceed $180,000 for capital project account number 092060305777 C0631, West Rocks Soccer Complex, to be used for additional drainage improvements and tree plantings. Number 2, authorize the issuance of $180,000 in general obligation bonds of the city to meet the appropriation for project 09-20-6030-5777-60631 West Rocks Soccer Complex.
Okay, so those are the two resolutions that we have, that we've been discussing, even though they had not been both read into the record. And so item number 2 has not been moved. So whoever moved item number 1, would you care to move item number 2?
So moved.
Ed, okay, so they both have been moved. Is there any further discussion concerning either of these two resolutions? Okay. All right. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the two resolutions appearing on page 50, Resolution 1 and Resolution 2, as read by the clerk, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the two resolutions have been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also like to thank the CFO and Angela for your help. Thank you very much. Great job as well. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, too.
Good night.
Care.
Okay. Next item is the financial reports. I thought perhaps it would be best, I'm not sure if Lisa's on this call, but to go to that, the tax collector's report first, if Lisa's on this Zoom. If not, maybe someone can summarize her report for us. It's dated today, June 7th. Is anyone able to summarize it for us, or to just tell us? I mean, from what I can tell from the report, I guess I can do it. Is we're doing pretty well with tax collections. I've collected 347 million of the 351 adjusted tax levy, and we're pretty much on par with past years, slightly ahead of past years in some areas, and only slightly behind in others. So overall, it's a positive tax collector's report. That's at least how I summarize it.
Yeah, I haven't had, I'm sorry. I haven't had a chance to review the specific report today. But as you know, we've been monitoring it probably for the last 65 weeks since March of 2020 when COVID hit. And you summarized it very accurately. We seem to be doing okay. The collections seem to be coming through. We announced the tax sale last year. People paid us, but we didn't conduct the tax sale. Right now, we have a tax sale scheduled in September. The bills for this coming year, first half, are being sent to the printer as we speak this week. So we're on schedule, we're on target, and so far so good. I mean, we'll close the books as always 60 days after year end of June 30. But it looks like on the tax revenue side, things have held up.
Thank you, Mr. Deckwitz. Any other comments concerning that? There's someone here from Oak Hills? No one here from Oak Hills to discuss. I haven't really had a chance to go through the Oak Hills stuff. I'm not sure if anyone else has. So, you know, I guess we can just review it at our leisure and maybe have comments next time around if we'd like to talk about it then. But the last update appears to be through April 30 of 2021. I think that's what we have in our packets.
Mr. Chairman, it's Troy.
Yeah.
In the future, Angela, can you just have somebody from Oak Hills maybe sit in on the meetings?
Yeah, sure. They usually go to finance and claims quarterly. Do you want them to come to every meeting?
No, I don't think they need to come to every meeting, but certainly if there's any.
No, but there's just general questions. Like the big one is the restaurant. When is that going to open? We're just wondering about that also. So.
Yeah, or at least, you know what, Angela, would be good is if they can provide a brief narrative of what what their spreadsheets or their Excels or whatever the reports show. If they can just give us a summary, like Mr. Androsky, what he does is he summarizes, pretty well what's contained in these reports. That would be helpful because otherwise we'd have to go through these things item by item and determine for ourselves what's there, which may be easy for some to do, but it's a little bit taxing for me.
Okay, yeah, I could give him a sample of Lisa Biagirelli, the tax collector's summary. You want something like that? Okay.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what, can I just make a suggestion? I think that maybe we just ask him to come every other month. I think he does provide an analysis. If you look at page 55, they do show the year-to-date performance, and they give some commentary on it as well. But unfortunately, some of the commentary just begs more questions, and possibly have them come every other month, or if they come one month and we have more questions for them to follow up, then maybe they could come back the following month at our request. But why don't we try it every 2 months, or if you want to do it every quarter, perhaps. But I think every quarter we're going to be pretty far down the road on this.
What I would like to know is now that they're in the black and are beginning to pay down the debt to the city, what their sense is of any projections of when that payoff might occur or something like that.
Right.
Well, I can't tell you that the revenue round, so none of the revenue pertains to their debt that's owed to the city, which was 2.2 million when they renegotiated that loan, and they pay from $11,000 to $13,000 a month, and that's currently, so that should decline as the season dwindles.
Right. Okay. So on average, they're projected to pay about $60,000 a year or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think to Troy's point, I mean, we keep hearing every time we get a report from them that the restaurant will open next month, or the next restaurant will open the following month. And once again, we look at the commentary, they say we'll open the end of May. It's the end of May, it hasn't opened. It doesn't look anywhere close to being open, to be honest with you.
The restaurant revenue does not affect the loan to the city.
Right. No, I understand that. But I'm just talking in general about questions that we would have to them, which may affect some of that revenue down the road at some point, their ability to pay, because their ability to pay 2 years ago was nil. They didn't have any money to pay anything. They were borrowing money.
All right. Well, yeah, if you can just have that conversation with them, certainly a summary and every other, and every so often making an appearance to answer, some of our questions would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll ask them.
Okay. Is there anything else? Motion, do I hear any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.